Well, I want to welcome Dr. Adam to the show again.
Hi.
Um, he is my go-to expert on tech stuff. So there's been a lot of stuff in the news lately about Momo, which apparently is not a new thing. But the first person I thought of was like, I just need to contact Dr. Adam and have him on so that we can get the skinny on what is concerning, what is not concerning, what parents need to know. And then I think to have a bigger conversation about just how to like protect our kids in general, since it's such a big topic right now. So thanks for coming on. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for having me again. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
So let's just get the Momo thing out of the way so that we can talk about what it is, what it isn't, what parents should worry about, shouldn't worry about.
All right. So I'm going to make a request, actually. As you're putting this video together, if you could not have that picture as part of the original thing, I don't know how you feel about that, but because I'm so tired of seeing this picture on my news feed, and I'm assuming other people are as well. So the Momo is this freaky. It's based on this sculpture out of Japan, as I've been reading, and it's this. I'm sure you've seen it if you're watching this video. It's dark eyes, and it's just this creepy looking little girl character, I guess. And I guess that image has been embedded supposedly in some kid content on YouTube and YouTube Kids, where it pops up while they're watching, perfectly normal kid related content, some cartoon or whatever. And then all of a sudden you have this scary looking image, and then it becomes, this person on the other end communicating with your child, telling them to do certain challenges, engaging with them through the video. But I think the more concerning Momo piece is that it also, there's these profiles, and this is international, by the way, not just in this country, where they, through WhatsApp or Instagram or other messaging type services, it tells the child, to put the Momo in their contacts, and they are then basically talking back and forth, challenging your child, if your child sort of gets pulled into it, to do certain tasks. And some of them are kind of silly and almost, and it's sort of like a game. Waking up in the middle of the night, I've seen, doing certain things, reaching out to certain people, sharing the whole Momo thing with their friends, trying to spread it, because that's ultimately what this is about. And ultimately, at least what got all of us parents all up in arms and concerned, is that the final challenge of the Momo challenge was that, Momo would tell your child to kill themselves. So obviously, as a parent, you read that, you see that, and the hair in the back of your neck goes up, and you're like, no, we don't want that. So, but that's basically my brief understanding of what Momo is. Sort of this jump scare, and then there's these challenges that are connected to it. And it's gone, viral around the country. So there's sort of two different layers here that I think about. There's the what are our kids doing on YouTube and YouTube Kids, and on these various apps, WhatsApp, Instagram, other messaging apps, and that causes us to feel anxious ourselves as parents, that we want to protect our kids. It's poking at our fears to that's a more primitive part of our brain, to protect our kids. And then that leads to the viral hoax piece, where, as far as I'm aware, and I've been reading a lot about this all week, that there really isn't much to it, except that it's been spread around by well-meaning parents like us, and professionals trying to get the word out. You see something, say something kind of thing. And that it has spread exponentially around the world now as supposedly this real thing. But, as far as I have read, there isn't, unfortunately, kids do die. Kids do commit suicide at times. I don't want to make light out of that ever. Tragic every single time. But as far as I've read, there's been zero connection between any of those tragic events and an actual Momo challenge or Momo video. So I'll pause there, but that's my basic understanding. Please feel free if you've read something different, but that's my understanding.
Yeah. And I feel like there's two levels of the whole Momo thing. It's been around for a long time. I've read about it in the past. So I think there is the whole like challenge component where it's challenging kids to hurt themselves, to kill themselves. So there's that component. And then I think there's the Momo piece where it's popping up on YouTube Kids, and what that entails, is really neither here nor there, but the fact that this jump scare thing is happening and it's getting through their filters. So I feel like those are almost two different issues, because I'm hearing a lot of stories that there's not a lot of validity in the fact that like kids are killing themselves. But I am hearing a lot of validity in the fact that it is popping up on YouTube Kids. And I'm hearing from parents that follow me or on my Facebook page or my Facebook groups that they have seen it themselves, or like their kids have experienced it. And so there is some validity in the fact that, yeah, this really creepy picture is jump scaring their kids. And for our anxious kids, that's enough to know that this creepy bird thing is going to pop out when they're sitting there watching Peppa Pig or Fortnite videos. So if there's validity in that, I feel like that's it's a good launching for an awareness that we should have no matter what.
Exactly. And
right?
That's where it's not new, whether we're talking about a blue whale challenge from a couple of years ago, which sounded very similar, was again challenging kids to do different tasks and then ultimately kill themselves. Again, a lot of this, I don't want to make light out of any of that, but I agree with you that in terms of this conversation, where I think we can get some help and some forward movement here, is sort of going back to, from my point of view, which I think you share, as digital immigrant parents, digital immigrant caregivers and teachers and well-intentioned, lovely people trying to get a handle on what are our kids up to online. And we often don't have a good sense of that, and they're watching videos, and YouTube Kids, whatever the platform is a bit of a rabbit hole. And once the kids are in there, it's hard to know what they're watching, and it's hard for them even to. Sometimes I work with plenty of kids, and I have kids at home and myself that you start watching a Fortnite video, and then that leads to this, and it leads to this, and it's hard to know exactly how you got to what you're watching. And sometimes it's perfectly innocent and perfectly safe, and others it's creepy. And so I'll start with, and I say this in my workshops all the time, something I advise parents to teach their kids, because ultimately I'm all about parents mentoring and safeguarding and teaching our kids to self-regulate. And my way of helping them self-regulate with YouTube, on this level at least, is to be aware of what I call the weird factor. That anything that feels weird, it doesn't have to be dangerous necessarily. It could be, but anything that is weird, to not just skip over that, not just keep that to themselves, to talk to their parents. It doesn't, and for parents to not just then rip it away, because then if you do that, your kid's not going to tell you when something is weird, but to listen and to assess, okay, what was that thing? And can we flag it? Can we look at it? Can we report it? There are mechanisms in place on YouTube and other places, and I'm sure more are going to be coming out now, at least from what I'm hearing, to give the users some type of recourse to make it safer. There's no way YouTube and anything that is done with an algorithm, any screening that is done with an algorithm, which YouTube Kids uses, where that's going to be perfectly safe. It's anything on the internet. I don't care what platform you're using. It's not 100% safe. But there are other YouTube alternatives out there that I recommend in my workshop and in my office that, again, I don't think are perfect, but are a huge step forward from YouTube Kids, because it's screened by a person. It's screened by a teacher or someone they've hired. Is built into the platform, that any video on this platform, Jester comes to mind as the one that I've been using the most and recommending, because it's an app, it's not just a website, where it's curated, selected carefully, and screened by people And then in addition to that, especially for younger kids with Jester at least, and that's Jezter,
Okay.
The parent can also screen. The parent, there's a whole parent login where you can make a playlist for your kid, and you could, kind of put videos that you think your kid would want to watch. And so not only was it originally screened to be on the app, but it's screened by the parent themselves. So exactly, there is no Momo popping up because at least you've moved the cursor through, and you could see that the video is just a Minecraft video, or it's whatever, unboxing video, or whatever your kid is into.
Okay.
And there's others out there too, not just Jester. I like Jester because of this playlist factor, and that the parents themselves can go through and select videos that you think your kid will want to watch. And for all you savvy parents out there that have listened to us and taken my advice and gone to Common Sense Media, I will just make a quick note here that if you do look at Jester, for example, on Common Sense Media, it's an old review, and I don't think it really. I loved Common Sense Media, but I don't think Common Sense Media's review of it is accurate. And I would encourage Common Sense Media, if anyone sees this, maybe I'll tag it later, to take another look, because it's not perfect, and they're definitely working on it. Jester, I'm talking about, to make it better. But some of their complaints about it being, where there's ads and there's external links. YouTube has all of that. Ads and external links, and so just to kind of put that in some sort of perspective or context, an app like Jester or KidCam a couple years ago, I don't think KidCam with K's is still in business, unfortunately. I have to stop recommending them because I've tried to contact the owners again, and it doesn't seem like the website's still running. So, but that was another website that had humans screening the videos before they were put onto the platform for especially young kids to be watching.
Yeah. So you said initially that we shouldn't just take away YouTube, but we should teach them. So I wonder what ages, or roughly, because it really depends on your child's cognitive functioning as well and their maturity, but as a guideline,
vulnerability around anxiety and impulsivity, and it gets complicated.
Right. Yeah, because I'm wondering, because I'll be honest, I just ripped kids' YouTube away yesterday because my kids are so anxious, and they're watching, on their own, and I felt like they could handle, the odd weird thing that pops up, but then they couldn't handle this bird-like thing popping up, so is that wrong to do? Is that wrong to just pull it away?
Well, from my point of view, I'd rather not just pull things away and then your child is left with, I think we talked about this last time we had one of these videos where lots of parents use YouTube and YouTube Kids and those kind of video platforms as a very healthy, productive coping strategy. Before bed, at other times as a way of getting the child out of that way of thinking, and and maybe watching a relaxing video or a funny video, or depending on what's going on. So I wouldn't necessarily, because we had this Momo scare this week, go to the other extreme where now we don't have that coping strategy anymore. And that's why I'm jumping to, if you could replace it with something else that allows you to know specifically what videos your child is going to be watching, depending on the age of your child and all of that. That's why I have been recommending Jester. I know there's others too, but that's the one that I'm most familiar with right now. And I downloaded it again yesterday, and I was kind of going through to see the updates, and it is significantly better than it was. So, in terms of what ages, once you get into that 10-year-old-ish age, most 10-year-olds that I know only want real YouTube.
Yeah.
They don't even look at YouTube Kids to begin with, regardless of Momo or anything else. So, really depends, knowing your kid and how many hours, what are they looking at? Instead of just seeing all digital content as the same, I would try to engage a dialogue with your child around what is the content and what are they watching, and having some boundaries and structure around that, where it's okay for him or her to watch for the next 20 minutes. And, we could see the video is only 3 minutes long. And so he's going to watch a few of those, or maybe this Ninja's video for Fortnite or whatever is, 20 minutes, and he's watching that and he's learning about the new season and, what to look for. And, this is part of what, there's a whole generation of kids who are growing up watching YouTube, watching their video games, just as one example. And, I don't think there's a major concern from my point of view that would require taking that away. But I would say this before the whole Momo thing, so this is not new from my end, but for parents and children to be talking about what they're doing online and having that dialogue, and for the parents to be able to set reasonable limits around those videos. So it makes sense.
Well, and I think the question is, if there's this possibility that something really freaky is going to pop up in the middle of it. And so even if you have good dialogue and you talk about it and you've got some good parameters, and so it's not out of control, the likelihood of something popping up may be small, but it's still there. So then what do you do? Like, if you have a child with anxiety or OCD, like in my world and with the audience that listens to this, we have kids who have clinical diagnoses, most of us, where like my son is 9, he's in 3rd grade, and I did not talk about Momo, but I just, I gave them jellies instead. I replaced their YouTube Kids, which we'll talk about jellies in a second. And he came home and that was the talk of the school. Like, everyone had talked about Momo. So he was afraid of YouTube. He was afraid. He understood why I took it away. He couldn't go to sleep last night. And this was just through talking about it, not even seeing the image. So to me, the risk is a little bit too much right now for their mental stability. But yet I gave them jellies, which is, it's a little bit too kid friendly. I don't know. Jellies is another alternative. It seems like it's curated by parents and it's really good content from YouTube, but it seems very academic oriented, and they are wanting their YouTubers, and they're missing that. I don't know if there's a happy medium for parents.
Again, so what you're describing makes perfect sense to me, and I think it was the right call. Not that you need my judgment on this, but I think it was the right call to take a break and to hit pause, whether you deleted the app or just made it not available through the settings. Either way, it's not hard to reinstall it. So, I think that is a reasonable response, but I wouldn't have that be your go-to moving forward. Anytime there's something that's potentially scary on the internet or on YouTube, I would caution anybody, even with clinical diagnoses, to jump to, okay, now we need to take it away. Again, depending on the age and depending on the severity of let's say the anxious episode that your child might be going through this week. Because ultimately we're raising future adults. This is sort of my thing. This is my approach here, where, we have to be very careful about what we're offering our kids at various ages and knowing them. But the big picture, if we zoom out, and what I'm about to say can be controversial, but from my point of view, I don't think it works. Abstinence doesn't work from my point of view. In the digital world, at least, and we could expand that to other aspects of our society as well. But just saying we're not allowing any of this not because you're not ready for it or can't handle it, but because of a potential risk, that sounds like more of an anxious over response. So, being, it's okay for this week to say, okay, given what's going on and it's all over the place, we're just going to take a break and we're going to use jellies instead, or Jester or KidCam or whatever the alternative is. But I would be careful, if you zoom out and look at the bigger picture of where we're heading in terms of raising our kids and helping them manage in this world, they have to have some exposure. And I want to be very careful about this, because depending on the family, that the child and the parent may not be ready for that exposure, and therefore they should wait. but it's not waiting indefinitely and just saying we're not doing this.
Yeah.
And I get that question a lot. So, you know,
So what are some good first steps where, let's just say, we'll just assume that we're talking about an anxious kid because that's pretty much who's listening to this. So let's say we have an anxious kid. What would be some good first steps, like as far as dialogue and maybe setting some preferences so that we're keeping it a little bit safer?
Right. So the most basic thing that I would offer is the dialogue piece, and whether you have an actual contract where you write down some of the expectations and rules. We could talk about that in a few minutes. I think we touched on that in the first time we spoke. But ultimately, what we're talking about is what I referenced earlier, where I would, depending on the age of your kid, if your kid is old enough to be on YouTube, I would, you know, even an anxious kid, I would have this dialogue around, there are weird, creepy people in this world. You see them every day on the street. You'll see them at the supermarket. The old adage of try not, you know, don't talk to strangers. You know, what is that about? It's, you know, there's weird people, that some of which are just weird and they're perfectly harmless. And some weird people could be kind of dangerous or harmful or whatever. Same weird people that are in your neighborhood and in our society, I don't mean your literal neighborhood, hopefully, but they could be, are also on the internet, and trying to help them understand that, you know, not that they need to be scared every time they go on their iPad. I don't want that. But there should be some level of, there's a decent chance I'm going to see something that is either inappropriate or creepy or weird or, and this is what I'm going to do if and when I see that. And the more I can predict and feel like I know what I'm going to do when I see that, which could be as simple as I'm going to flag it and go get mommy, so she could see it too, and then we will report it or whatever. But I don't think you need to go through all those steps ahead of time. But as long as the prediction and the awareness, again, depending on the kid's age, you don't want to go overboard here, but that there is a plan in place that makes them feel powerful, that whatever I'm going to see on this screen, because it's on a screen, nothing's jumping out at them and grabbing them. You know, it might feel that way, but it's not. That's not how screens work. How amazing that the graphics are. You know, that's not what's happening. So, but they might see something that might make them feel really uncomfortable. And if and when that happens, they're okay. And we got to talk about it. But for them to be aware of that would be my first step.
And I like that, because I feel like, you know, I'm always big about taking lemons and making lemonade. And I feel like we can take this huge uptick in talking about Momo and our online safety and turn it into a really good discussion, because our kids are going to come home. They're going to hear about it at school just because it's kind of like in vogue to talk about this week, maybe next week too. And like, I know with my son, I didn't bring it up, but then I did normalize it the way that you're doing. And so I think explaining to your kids, you know, exactly what you said, there are weird people. And I had this exact conversation with him last night, because he's like, you know, is Momo going to try to kill me? Or here's a green thought. So I talk about red thoughts and green thoughts. And he was like, well, my green thought is that there's thousands of homes. So the chances of Momo coming to our home is really small. And so I had to have more of a dialogue and say, Momo is just someone behind a keyboard, you know, if that, you know, there's just jerks in the world. There's weird people, and they may not even be in this country. So I think just normalizing and bringing it down, like you said, it's not jumping out of our screen, you know. And then finally he said, oh, it's like a hacker, mom. It's just like someone who's hacking like behind a keyboard. And I said, yeah, they're not going to actually hurt you. But if you see something weird that makes you uncomfortable, and this is where we move into just that general conversation, let me know. Or definitely click off of it, you know, so that we're not just talking about Momo, but we're just talking about, you're going to see weird things online. We can always protect you. But, you know, let me know about it, or don't watch it.
Right. And again, that has nothing to do, in my opinion, with Momo. I think you're right that this week it gives us an opportunity to renew those dialogues and reset in some ways, especially with younger kids. Who might be, you know, who felt, and parents felt, that YouTube Kids or one of these other apps, YouTube, you know, it was safe, because, you know, it's still the internet. So just I don't want to be too redundant here, so I would just agree that it's about having that dialogue and having, if your kids are old enough, if you're handing over this adult device, iPad or whatever it is, if you're inviting them into the adult digital world. And if you don't have some restrictions in place or settings in place, and it's not set up in a way, which unfortunately, as I travel the country speaking to lots of lovely communities, that is what I hear, that most families, I don't care how well-intentioned and lovely the people are and intelligent they are, there aren't that many people out there that I come in contact with, at least that are at my workshops, that have too much in place. They've heard of different things, and maybe they bought Circle, or maybe they've heard about different various ways of handling things, but then they're reactive. They're busy. They haven't gotten around to it. They know they should. They feel sort of guilty that they haven't, but they're not doing this. But the reality is they're inviting their kids into the digital world, and at minimum, as a starting point, to have this brief conversation about, as you go into YouTube, please be aware, Johnny, that there's some weird people in the world, and you can make it funny, but make sure they understand that they're likely to come in contact with creepy, weird, inappropriate. I don't know exactly what the average age of seeing pornography is, but it's getting younger and younger. I could tell you that. Last I read, it was around 11, but I think that's actually not true. I think it's probably closer to 8 at this point, which is shocking.
Yeah.
There is going to be creepy, inappropriate things, even if you have some of these settings in place. And as good parents, I'm sure, we could say, okay, we're going to put some things in place, and things are still going to get through the filters, are still, or our kids are going to go around the filters because they'll learn how to, because they're very savvy. They're natives, where at least most of us still are pioneers.
Yeah.
And so therefore, it's not going to be 100%. We're keeping our kids 100% safe all the time online. That's just,
yeah.
I don't think that's a thing.
So there's three things that basically you're saying. Open the dialogue, keep the dialogue. That's key. Learn about parental controls, because just because you're saying give them that freedom, like we can't protect them, there are still parental controls that we can explore. And I mean, I learned a lot of parental controls from your course that I didn't even know. Like, I didn't know you could lock the iPad. I remember last time we talked, that was like,
yeah, got it.
Huge. I mean, that like literally altered our life that day because, I want them to listen to guided imagery when they go to bed, but I don't want them playing on their iPad at 3 a.m. And now I know how to lock it. So I think it's just becoming savvy and learning those things. And then the third point is, you're going to have the expectation that you can't completely cocoon your kids. Like they're going to come across things that are maybe upsetting, and it's not a perfect world, and it will never be completely pure like that. So it's like these three things that we have to consider.
Yes to all three of those. Thank you for summarizing, at the risk of me rambling here, which I try not to do. But I talk a lot. So, but I guess the piece that I would shift slightly in the third item is not only around the cocooning our kids. From my point of view, if you're really a motivated parent, especially of a young kid, you could do a decent job cocooning. You could keep them off the internet for the most part, especially when they're pretty young. And there's arguments out there that, maybe that actually is the right thing to do in terms of brain development, in terms of, we don't really know what all this is doing in terms of evolution and where we're going. And I know there's sides to this debate. Where I have come down, almost out of necessity of working with so many parents in the way that you're just described, who's likely listening to this, parents of anxious kids, parents of at least a borderline clinical population, meaning kids who are really struggling. That's where that is who I spend the majority of my time with. For those parents and others, I actually don't think it's a good idea to really go into this looking to cocoon, because even though you want to keep your kids safe and you want to teach them to be savvy and to be able to manage this world into their future, because they are going to be adults. I work with lots of teenagers where, in a couple of years, this idea of not having phones in your room, just as it's a common recommendation I make all the time, with good reason. Sleep deprivation is a major issue across the world, certainly in the communities that I know. And the phones in their room is a major factor that just exacerbates the sleep deprivation, if not causes it, but it definitely makes it worse. But you think about these teenagers who are going off to college in 3 years, 2 years, next year, in a month. They're going to keep their phones in their room. They don't have a choice, depending on what campus they're on. What are they going to? You're expecting your 18-year-old to keep their phone in a closet? That's not going to happen. Yeah. They're going to keep it on their nightstand, just like most of the parents do. And so it's really preparing them, anxious or not, impulsive or not, vulnerable or not, to be able to manage the world that they're going to be in. And that includes dealing with stupid, freaky things like Momo.
Yeah.
And that's the category I'm putting it in right now, that it's just this viral, annoying thing that is all over my newsfeed. And it says something about things that I follow, and I felt guilty in a way earlier this week when I myself posted it. 4 different families sent it to me, and I figured people were talking about it. I knew it was clickbait. I knew it was similar to the whole blue whale thing, that, there's some concern here, but am I contributing to it? Am I giving it more exposure? And I did. And
I did too. I saw your thing and then I shared it.
So again, this is what happened. And so it grew exponentially. And here we are again talking about it. And, hopefully in a productive, healthy, positive way. That's why I started with, maybe not having that picture, because it just keeps feeding it, which is what it's designed to do.
Yeah. And I look at life in general as we're given bad things or upsetting things. And then it's like, how do we turn this around and make it a good thing? Right now there's a microscope under online activity with kids. That actually is awesome, because how many of us don't spend enough time thinking about this? We don't have a dialogue about it. We don't talk to our kids about it. We don't think about what our kids are watching or how we can have a conversation about it. So I'm hoping that this will shift. People want to read about this right now. They want to hear about it. They don't understand it. I'm not really upset that I shared the Momo story. I wish I had found a creative way of not showing the image. But I shared the article and the image popped up, but took it off my Facebook group because it was traumatizing people. But I mean, as a parent to anxious kids, we need to be ahead of, we have to be proactive. And so knowing that this is coming down the pike and our kids are going to come home and they're going to talk about it, and we can have our planned response of how we're going to handle it as anxious parents, can be really helpful. And I think the dialogue that we're having is important.
Absolutely. So let me shift to your second question, which was about, are there certain settings, are there parental control pieces that should be part of this? And I would say there are, and there's some that are built in, especially, again, I focus the most on Apple products because that's what most kids and families are still seeking out and have. Yeah. There's other options for Android, and, as I mentioned, Circle earlier, Circle with all wireless devices in the house. So, and you could set certain limits there. So any limit I'm about to reference, my hope and my goal wouldn't be just to stop the kid. Again, just keeping with the same theme, the limits that I use are ways of having, the limits are enforceable based on what the parents say are the rules and what we're hoping to accomplish to teach our kids to learn to self-regulate. The internet is designed to be dysregulating, and we could talk about that. I don't know if there'll be time today, but maybe another time. And I would strongly recommend parents, especially if you have maybe 10 and up, 10-year-old and up. There's an amazing documentary out called Like, Like. It really goes through a lot of what we're talking about here, but around social media especially, but how it's literally designed. you know, and they do all these interviews with people, you know, from the tech industry and kids, and that it's brilliantly designed where the user is the product, and it's an attention-based economy. And again, so I won't get into that too much right now, but the documentary, like, I would definitely recommend, and I've been on panels and led
Oh,
discussions
that's cool.
just recently, and it's, I'm sure it's out there. I don't have the website in front of me, but I'm sure I could send
I'll
it to you.
find it. Yeah.
Well, IndieFlix, I think, is
Okay.
same people who did Angst, which is also a
Oh,
great
okay.
documentary, Screenagers, a couple of others too. So I just put that out there, that, you know, because that's on my mind as we're talking about this, that it's these apps, and YouTube included, are designed to pull our attention and pull our kids' attention who are more vulnerable than we are. Anxiety aside, kids'
Right.
brain development, I think we talked about this last time,
Yeah.
they don't have a fully developed prefrontal cortex. They have an overdeveloped emotional brain that sets them up to seek out and want to and be more vulnerable to be pulled into the internet in very real, very powerful ways. And so when we're talking about parental controls, the reason I threw that in here is part of what I'm going for here is, can we force the dialogue? Can we force our kids to have to stop and think and ask for more time, potentially almost built in as like, okay, this next month, you know, I'm sorry to frustrate you, Johnny, but you know, when you're on YouTube, you're going to notice that you're going to see this thing pop up where it's going to say you only have 5 minutes left. I want you to know ahead of time when you come to me and say, hey, there's only 5 minutes left. I know it might be a little bit annoying, and hopefully it won't be right in the middle of the video, but I will give you more time. But I want to make sure that you register in your head that 20 minutes, a half an hour, whatever the original time limit has expired, or in
Yeah.
5 minutes will expire. I want you to start to realize that and have that awareness of the time that's going by, because it goes by so quickly. And
Yeah.
hopefully if your child isn't feeling defensive and isn't just in a no mode, they'll understand, because you're not taking anything away again, but you're forcing that dialogue.
And even if they are in a no mood, which they might be, I mean, you're still bringing that awareness, you know, where they're just not getting sucked in, and they're not being aware of how much time they're spending on it.
Right. So with Apple, the easiest way to do that is with their new screen time functionality. It's right under settings. If you update to iOS 12, which came out, I think, in September or October of 2018, so relatively recently, most parents, you know, who have an iPhone or a relatively new iPad probably already have updated. If not, you know, I would encourage everyone to do that. Unfortunately, I have not updated my online course yet to include the screen time. I just haven't found the time to sit down and do that. I need to. But what I do in my live workshops, at least, is I go through and I show parents how, very simply, that the engineers at Apple have it all built in. You already paid for it. You don't have to buy a new set of software and this new app and whatever. It's all built in. And if you just kind of click through, you could set limits on your child's device through your device. It links up with the family sharing, which I know we talked about.
You're kidding me. I didn't even know this.
So again, once you have the family sharing set up with the Ask to Buy system, which also, by the way, forces the dialogue.
Yeah.
Instead of your child just off and running with the app that they heard about at school, or from the older kid at the back of the bus, they have to ask your permission before it goes on their personal device. That's the family sharing piece. In addition to family sharing now, automatically what gets linked up in the screen time portion of the settings would be your children's name. Any child who's a minor that's part of the family sharing is then listed under the screen time. You click on them, you create a password that they don't know, they can't guess, 4 digits, last 4 of your childhood phone number or something like that they can't guess, you won't forget. And then you have a whole menu of items that you could then turn things on and off. You could set app limits, which forces the dialogue. You know, YouTube Kids, whatever you're using, Jester, you could set, okay, it's an hour, and you only have an hour.
So you can individually set them for the different apps?
Yep.
That's amazing. See, I didn't even know this.
through screen time. You could set that up. That's different than the guided access, by the way. That's a
Yeah.
whole section.
Yeah.
Guided access is under settings, accessibility, learning, and you kind of have to click through and then set it
Yeah.
up.
That's
That's the app.
really hidden.
Yeah. That, I don't know why. I don't know.
Yeah.
If Apple would just call me back, I could potentially help. Just don't return my phone calls. Anyway, so it's guided access locks the device on that one app. And there's also a way of setting limits and all of that. I mean, time limits. So again, it forces that dialogue. If the time limit is up, the best thing you could do, or the thing your kid would love you to do, is to give more time, because
Right.
they handled it well. They didn't have a tantrum. They didn't throw the iPad.
Yeah.
You help them predict, okay, in 20 minutes, this is going to go off. And if you handle it well and you come to me and you don't yell at me and you're respectful, you're going to get another 20 minutes.
Yeah. I
And
love that.
it's very simple, and it forces their awareness, and it forces their mindfulness, and it forces that dialogue. So you are teaching them to manage themselves. This is all about kids learning to self-regulate.
Yeah, that's such a good point. It's like, it's not just like you're pushing down the authority. It's like you're using these parental controls to facilitate awareness and foster that dialogue. And then you're not the bad guy when you say, you know what, I love the way you were calm and you came to me. Yeah, absolutely. Go have 20 more minutes. And then you're the good guy.
Again,
Yeah, I like that.
You're attending, you're giving them positive attention, which gets the reinforcement cycles going. Instead of it's all negative and it's always taking things away and they're in trouble, and because that becomes a coping strategy for lots of kids, especially with anxiety, clinical anxiety. I would say their number one coping strategy, generalizing, I'm sorry, is getting their parents to cope for them.
Yeah.
Parents, clamp down, and I'm guilty of this at home sometimes, where it's again the simplest track to getting to where I need to be as a parent to get my kid to handle themselves is for me to lower the boom and we're done.
Yep.
And that works for me, but it doesn't work for the child, because then they're not the one learning to regulate. And if we're talking about Momo, we're talking about Fortnite, Apex Legends, which is the new sort of Fortnite craze game. Whatever the thing is on the internet, it's all designed to be dysregulating. Literally, it's designed to be dysregulating, which is why it pulls us in. And it's our job as parents to teach our kids to learn to regulate over time.
Yeah, I like that. I like the shift of we're teaching them to self-regulate. We can't avoid this technology. It is here. It's going to be here. It's going to even grow. And so teaching them how to cope with that is such a wonderful thing. I know you have amazing resources. I know I took your course a long time ago and I thought, I'll just look at what he's got. I'm sure I won't learn anything new. And I was taking notes the entire time. So, and you walk a parent through exactly how to set these preferences, and you have contracts on there, and even just philosophically the bigger dialogue. So it's a really good go-to.
I appreciate that. Any parents that are out there and that are tempted to look at it again, it's iparent101.com. iparent101.com is my website. And anybody who does get the current course, you have a lifetime subscription. So when I do update it, you don't have to worry about, that you're going to miss out on the new information, because the current course that's there, I think it's still a parenting course. I go through some of the details of the tech stuff, but the tech piece is really what I need to update. I'll probably update the whole thing when I do have time, but it's on my calendar. I just need to do it. Especially the screen time stuff, because there is no manual. Apple came out with all this stuff. They invested, their engineers, created serviceable parental controls built in, but no one really knows about it unless you're tuned in. And
I know. And apparently I'm not.
Now you are.
Yeah, I know. Every time I talk to you, I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to go get their iPads and do something new. So that was just a huge takeaway in and of itself. See? Thank you, Momo.
Thank you, Momo.
Yeah, good things are happening.
Exactly.
Well, I appreciate you coming on short notice because I just grabbed you and I wanted to talk to you right away. So I appreciate your flexibility, and you are
Absolutely.
always my person when I have a tech question around kids. So thank you so much.
Pleasure. Take care. Again, iparent101.com. If there's any questions, you could email me directly, info@iparent101.com. I built the whole course from those questions, starting with in my office, which is where I am right now, and then all these workshops that I'm doing around the country. Those questions get factored into the next workshop I do. So thank you so much.
Yeah, very helpful.
When I first discovered Natasha, I was in a desperate place with my son, and his anxiety was getting worse, and we had tried counseling, and it was not going well.
We were told at that point, we can't help your son. Early intervention is great. He's too young.
Parenting a child with anxiety is not easy, and sometimes it feels hopeless.
First time we took her to a therapist, who then dismissed her after about a year and a half, putting it down to bad parenting.
But what if it didn't have to be that way? What if you could join a community with parents in the same boat, with kids with similar struggles and issues? What if you could have access to resources that will help you with behavior and sleep and avoidance and opposition and fears? What if you can have somebody walk with you on your journey? Someone with clinical expertise and parental knowledge. Hi, my name is Natasha Daniels, and I'm a child therapist and a mom to 3 kids. And I've dedicated my life and my career to helping kids with anxiety and OCD, including my own. And now I want to help you too. I have created the AT Parenting Community to do just that. When you join as a member of the community, not only will you get access to resources that will help you with your child's struggles and help your family reduce the chaos in their home, you're going to be joining a community of parents just like you, with knowledge, love, and support to give. You will get access to online classes that will help your child and your child's struggles. You'll also get bonus videos and podcast material made just for members. And I've got your kids covered too. You'll have access to a library full of worksheets and videos specially designed for your kids by myself and other therapists. But that's not the best part. You're going to be getting direct attention from me, and I will be giving you support in many different ways. I'll be doing Facebook Lives every single week in our private Facebook group, where members can go to talk and get support. I'll also be doing office hours in our private Facebook group. So once a week, you can ask me whatever you want. I'll be available for an hour to answer your direct questions. But if you need a little bit more support, I've got you covered too, because I will be doing coaching calls for those that need it twice a month. And for those that need even more support, I'll be doing once a month support group calls. And I'll be doing a member spotlight call. So I'll be picking one member every month, and I'll be walking them through the process of helping their children. And you'll have access to the replay and to that phone call as well. Raising a child with anxiety or OCD is hard, but together we can get through it.
Natasha gave us practical tools. She wasn't like the books that we had read.
If you have a child with anxiety or OCD, she is your go-to woman.
Natasha had practical real-life advice that we started implementing the day that we listened to them.
In a desperate time in my journey with my son, she has been a lifesaver. Her resources have given me hope, they've given me tools and support, and they're some of the best resources you can find out there for anxiety and OCD.